What if I told you the smartest way to learn wasn't about being more complex, but actually way, way simpler? Today, we're diving into some really cool research that suggests the most powerful ideas are the ones that are easiest to learn. Let's get right into it. So, we're going to start with a puzzle, a real head scratcher that sits right at the heart of how our brains work. It's all about something we take for granted every single day: the incredible, almost magical efficiency of our own minds. I mean, really think about it. A little kid sees a dog, then another one, and suddenly, boom, they can spot dogs they've never ever seen before. You can pick up a new game, understand a new idea, or recognize a new face with just astonishing speed. How do we do that? How do our brains pull so much meaning from what's often just a tiny sliver of information? Well, when you put us next to a lot of today's AI, the difference is just night and day. We learn from a handful of examples. Machine learning often needs millions, even billions. We're great with messy, noisy data, but an algorithm can get thrown off completely. Our learning feels fast, intuitive. Theirs is often a slow, deliberate grind through the data. And that gap, that's the puzzle we're trying to solve. So what's the secret? The answer this research points to is so elegant and honestly a little counterintuitive. It's not that our brains are these infinitely complex supercomputers. It's that we're naturally wired to learn a very specific type of thing. And there it is. This is the core idea from the study. More robust concepts are easier to learn. Let that sink in for a second. This completely flips the script. Maybe it's not that we're geniuses at learning complicated stuff. Maybe we're geniuses because our brains are naturally drawn to simple, strong, robust ideas. Okay, so what in the world is a robust concept? Imagine you're trying to separate a bunch of red dots from blue dots on a screen. A robust concept is like taking a thick marker and drawing one straight, bold line right down the middle. It's simple, it's clear, and there's a ton of wiggle room. A non-robust concept? That'd be like trying to draw a super fine squiggly line that perfectly snakes around every single dot. It's precise, sure, but it's also incredibly fragile. And this isn't just some abstract theory. For any of you out there into computer science, this whole idea is actually grounded in a well-known machine learning concept called margin classifiers, which are basically just algorithms designed to find that exact kind of nice, wide, clear boundary in data. All right, so our brains prefer these simple, robust concepts. Big deal, right? Well, it is a huge deal. The practical advantages of this are exactly what makes our learning so incredibly efficient. This is where the magic happens. See, when a concept is robust, a few things happen. First, because it's so simple, you don't need a ton of examples to get it. Second, that big, clear boundary means a little bit of noise or a few weird examples aren't going to throw you off. This all adds up to a learn process that's just faster and simpler. And by the way, this is backed up by a whole lot of psychological studies. Now get this. This is the really wild part. The study found that to learn these robust concepts, the model only needed a constant number of examples. That means it doesn't matter if you're looking at 10 different features or 10,000, the number of examples you need to see stays the same. That is just off the charts efficiency. And let's just double click on that resistance to noise for a sec. The key takeaway here is that simplicity itself is your best defense. When a rule is simple and bold, it's like a really strong radio signal. A little bit of static or interference, the noise, just can't overpower it. The core idea is just too clear to be disturbed. Now, this idea of robust learning, it doesn't just exist in a bubble. It actually plugs right into a much bigger, more fundamental principle in cognitive science that explains so much about how we think. So let's zoom out for a moment. It's called the simplicity principle. You might know it better by its other name, Occam's razor. The basic idea is that when our brains are faced with a bunch of different explanations for something, we are hardwired to prefer the simplest one that actually fits the facts. We hunt for the shortest, cleanest, most elegant answer. And this brings us to another cool concept, bounded rationality. It's the idea that we use simple rules of thumb, or heuristics, not because we're lazy or can't handle complexity, but because they are ridiculously effective. A simple rule might only use a tiny fraction of the information out there, but it's super fast and super robust. That complex model might be more precise in a perfect world, but in reality, it's slow and can break easily. So let's bring this all home. What's the real takeaway from this whole deep dive into simplicity? It's all about a fundamental shift in how we should probably think about intelligence itself. It's about working smarter, not harder.
So let's just walk through that logic one last time because it's so powerful. It all kicks off with our brain's natural preference for a simple, robust concept. Because it's simple, you need way fewer examples to learn it. That, in turn, makes the whole process incredibly resistant to noise and errors. And what's the end result? A much faster, way more efficient path to actually understanding something.
So why does any of this really matter? Well, first, it gives us a real solid explanation for the so-called magic of how humans learn so well. Second, it could be a roadmap for building AI that's a lot smarter, more efficient, and more, well, human-like. But maybe the biggest thing is it's a powerful reminder that in our ridiculously complex world, the simplest, most robust solutions are often the strongest. Our preference for simplicity isn't a bug, it's our greatest feature.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on. As we try to solve ever more complex problems, maybe the answer isn't to build ever more complex systems. Maybe the real future of intelligence, both ours and the ones we build, is actually a lot simpler and a lot more robust than we ever thought possible.